Hello, sweethearts. Okay, so, my phone just ate a 25-minute video, so I'm gonna have to reshoot this. Hopefully it'll go a little bit more smoothly. And I won't have to refer to my notes quite as much, I hope. And if I do, oh well, that's a thing that happens, right? So, finally, that video book report of the Wraiths of Will and Pleasure by Storm Constantine. This is book 1 of the second trilogy of the Wraithu stories that she's been writing since about 1988. That's not all she writes, of course. And she's not the only person who writes Wraithu stories anymore, not even in an official way. So, yes, there are other, like, official Wraithu mythologers. So this is the first book in the second trilogy, and I want to make one thing quite clear. If you've read anything about the books on Wikipedia, and I would go in and edit this if I thought it would stay. But if you read anything about these on Wikipedia and other sources who apparently reference Wikipedia for these, so I was under the impression when I started this one that each book in the histories would be taking place, parallel to the books in the Chronicles, just told in third person from a different perspective of, different characters. What ended up happening in reality is this book actually goes from about a third of the way through the first book of the Chronicles trilogy, so about, 1/3 to 1/2 of the way from Enchantments of Flesh and Spirit. That's about when this timeline picks up, and it ends shortly after the established timeline in Fulfillments of Fate and Desire, which would be the third book in the first trilogy. So, this book actually covers all three of those, and I'm actually almost done with the Shades of Time and Memory, which is the second book in the second trilogy, and that picks up well after this one. Probably maybe a year or two after this one. That is when Shades of Time and Memory picks up. So, while they do all follow the same timeline, it's like the events of this one takes place, is just like, pretty much following 4 different characters, only 2 of whom we first meet in the Enchantments of Flesh and Spirit, as relatively minor characters. We meet them in that book, and then this follows them, through events, different events, same timeline of the other 2 books. So, the events of the other 2 books do, some of them have an effect, but, again, we're generally following the same timeline, different events. This takes place during the, like I said, this book alone takes place during, pretty much the whole trilogy, the whole first trilogy. The second book, picks up after the events of this one, and and I want to say this one goes to maybe a year after the first trilogy epilogue. So the second book in the trilogy picks up maybe a year after these events, so, like, this is the only one that follows the same line of events, or at least the same time frame as the first trilogy. The other book is, it's the same characters as in this one, mostly, anyway. It just... Actually, no, we've got a whole lot of new characters, but there are some characters who are common to every book up, before that. So, yeah, whoever wrote that on Wikipedia I was led to believe that each book would parallel, like this one would parallel Enchantments of Flesh and Spirit, and I thought that the second book would follow the second book in the first trilogy, but, you know, through different things. No, that's not how it works. It's like, it's some of the same characters are common to all the books, but yeah, it's, no, you gotta, one thing that Constantine did do in the introduction, though, is, you know, she did say that, you know, she did her best to make it a book that would be enjoyable to somebody who did not necessarily need to read the first trilogy to know what's happening. And I do think that this could be enjoyable without the first trilogy, but at the same time, I do think that there's a heightened level of enjoyment that came from reading the first trilogy first, because, well, she does give, you know, like, a good, you know, at least, like, brief understanding of who certain characters and events are. You know, there is that whole other level that, you know, really lets it sink in, the importance of these events. So, without further ado, so this book, as I said, it does follow a couple minor characters who we meet in the Enchantments of Flesh and Spirit. Hello, Phoebe! Hi, kitty! So, I'm going to go in order of how we meet them in this book. First we meet, one of the first characters, so the first book from the first book of the first trilogy, so, the first character from, Enchantments that we meet in here is Ulame, who is, just feeling disenchanted with the tribe who took him in, so, you know, he's feeling disenchanted. It's not the tribe that incepted him, and, you know, he's just feeling, you know, distanced from them, and goes and wanders off. Also from Enchantments, we follow Flick's story, and Flick, he similarly is feeling very distanced, very, disenchanted with the tribe that took him in, which I also believe is not the tribe who accepted him, either. Hello, trains. And so, but along with the Lame story, we follow Lilim, and we actually watch Lilim grow up. And the fourth character who we follow closely in this book is Mima. And Mima is very... Actually, no, Mima, we did see Mima first in Enchantments. Yeah, so... we did see Mima first in Enchantments very, very briefly. Very, very briefly. Not even a full page dedicated to her in Enchantments. But she is Palaz's sister, who, Palaz, when he was leaving Salt Rock, which was the tribe Flick was with, you know, just requested of Flick, you know, when, you know, if you can, you know, go and find anybody in my family who, you know, has survived, you know, these, you know, wars and skirmishes with the, you know, more hostile Wraithu tribes who, you know, are, you know, accepting any young man who can be, and, you know, just let, you know, any of them, just let them know, especially if my sister Mima, you know, is around, just let her know I'm alright. So, we do find Mima, and, you know, she does learn, of what, Palaz has been through, and, you know, Flick does meet her and tell her, but, first she meets Ulame and Lilim, and, you know, because, now she meets them both at once because Lilim has been left to be exposed by the tribe that birthed her. And I say her because, as we learn in the first trilogy, there is the tribe of the or not the tribe, there is the Camagrian, who is, you know, sort of a sister race to the Wraithu. You know, they cannot, you know, it is very firmly established here that Camagrian and Wraithu cannot interbreed. They can't even take a runa, which is, you know, their mystically heightened form of sexual intercourse, but then there's, you know, proper sex magic, which is Griskon, and but, you know, we learn in this book that, you know, Wraithu and Camagrian cannot take a runa together, and that, you know, leads to all sorts of things that was not necessarily, you know, wanted by the Wraithu, but, you know, Lilim did go... Lilim was far more into it. And hello, kitty. And, so... we follow...
Hello, yes, I'll feed you, don't worry.
So we follow, so Lilim is born, and, you know, the tribe, you know, doesn't know what to make of her, because while, the Camagrian are equally androgynous to Wraithu, there are some differences that are apparently visible even, you know, shortly after birth. And it's just like, no, we don't know what this is, you know, we've heard of something like this, but, you know, it might be dangerous, so let's just, you know, let the child be exposed, and, you know, what happens, happens. And Ilame, you know, happens upon the child with a little amulet that says, you know, Lilim, who, you know, which, you know, he assumes to be, you know, a given name, and he was like, oh, a baby. And, you know, just decides, you know, well, okay, well, it'll be good company while I'm off wandering around. It'll give me something to do to look after the, you know, Harling. And, you know, and he does. And, you know, he has some personal growth, and goes from, you know, arguably, you know, self-centered, you know, sort of hard to, you know, somebody a bit more nurturing. And Flick, when Flick becomes disenchanted with his own tribe and leaves his tribe, he encounters Itzama, who is human, but is not exactly alive, but it's described as something like not a spirit like you know it. So Itzama then, like, instructs Flick into and I'm using, and I know this is, you know, sort of, you know, a loaded word, especially in pagan circles, you know, is seen as somewhat appropriative, but it is used sparingly in the book. So, like, the shamanic arts, and, you know, Flick then, and I'm using polytheistic language, even though it's very clear in this book that Constantine is coming from a chaos magic background, which I believe I mentioned in my first video about the Wraithu stories. And, you know, so in the shamanic arts that Flick learns, he learns of, you know, Wraithu deities. Now, in chaos, now I'm going to explain real quick the difference there is, like, so in a chaos magic background, deities are, are evolved thought forms that, the language that I see used, with people who have a background in chaos magic is, oh, we create these gods, and, through, our belief in them. And, I can see the argument there. but in traditional, polytheism, which I see a lot of people calling, devotional polytheism these days, especially pagans. I'm really not going to name, because I don't get along with a lot of with certain pagans on the internet. So in traditional or devotional polytheist circles, it's the most common belief is the gods just are. The gods just are. They are. They always have been. They always will be. And they are something that is infinitely, greater than ourselves, that, we did not create, we just learned about. And, the ways we learn about them may differ, and certainly, somebody was the first to learn about them, but, they just are, they always have been, they always will be. Even the gods who can die, they just... they just exist. It's what and who they are. So I may tend toward, I tend toward, polytheistic language talking about this. So, if you're another, fan of the books, and you feel like correcting me on the differences there, I'm just like, go right ahead. You can, you are certainly welcome to see it the way you do. I am welcome to see it the way I do. So, Flick, learns of, the Wraithu deities, and is then instructed by Isima that, this will, be, something that, he will be, destined to, teach, and so, Elame and Lilim, before Flick finds it, they find the old plantation where Palaz and his family worked as sharecroppers, and the passage of time in this book is made kind of hazy, but it's easy to follow. It's easy to follow. So I'm guessing like maybe a few weeks went by, maybe a month and some. And now Lilim had known of Mima on the plantation, and that Mima was living in the one of the smaller houses for the sharecroppers of the primary house. And I forget who originally who the plantation's name was. Was it Richards or something? I don't know. Whatever. So they call it the White House because it's big and white. So Elame and Lilim, just pretty much just take up residence in the big house, and Mima's been, wandering up to the big house, for, occasional supplies and whatever's in the food stores and whatnot, and, just forms a bond with Lilim that is, largely nonverbal. When Lilim discovers Mima, Mima has just been alone for so long that she's not quite right in the head, and sort of, doesn't quite use her words as much. But then, through an accident, Lilim manages to incept Mima. And I'm not going to spoil how that happened, but it was an accident on so many levels that happened. And we learn in the first trilogy that the Camagrian can incept human women. So, crap, I'm not referencing my notes, so whatever. And then what happens? Then what happens is shortly after maybe it's shortly. So then Flick encounters the big house on the old plantation, and it's pretty much deserted of all humans at that point except for Mima. But even then, Mima's not human much longer after the other characters come into her life, and Flick and Lame are trying to figure out, because, you know, they're watching this just like, okay, this is, you know, pretty much, you know, how an Inception is working, but, you know, just without all of the ritual, you know, that we're used to, so let's just, you know, see what happens. And then, you know, they're living their life, you know, it's sort of a makeshift family, and then, you know, the Iwagena tribe comes back around. Oh, wait, no, I skipped a part. Edit out. So then, Mima tells them that, no, you're not the only one, you know, like, Therese is still here. He's, Pel's brother, I believe younger brother, originally, and, but something went wrong with his inception, and Lame and Flick, you know, perform the sex magic, the Grisicon, to help heal Therese, and shortly after he has been healed, he, you know, he gets his bearings around him, you know, he interacts with the, you know, with the sort of, you know, little family that's created itself there, but he decides, you know, he needs to go wander off by himself for a while and figure out who he is and what his, you know, place is. And shortly after that, the, you know, tribe who initially tried to incept him, the Iwagena, who are regarded in the books as, you know, very warlike, very violent, they encounter the house, briefly take Flick and Lame captive, but then they escape, and so then, like, the main four in this book, which would be Lame, Flick, Lilim, and Mima, they just decide, you know what, let's just leave the house, it's kind of been tainted at this point, and they get up for a while, they are just, like, being nomadic and going, you know, up and down the river, you know, selling various little, crafts that they make, including statues of the Wraithu deities that Flick is, you know, has instructed, Lilim on. And so the supporting characters in this, a couple we met in the first trilogy would be Seal, Telanka, and we also meet Therese. Oh yeah, I told you about Therese, and we also meet Opalexian. About, I want to say, about halfway through this, we meet her. Maybe about 2/3 of the way, but a little sooner than halfway through we meet Telanka, because she's, you know, with the Zagani tribe, you know, as we've met her, we very briefly met her in Bewitchments of Love and Hate, and then we learned more of her in Fulfillments of Fate and Desire, both from the first trilogy, but we learned with the Zagani tribe that she actually, like, is, you know, sort of forms this tribe, and they, you know, and she just wanders around with them for periods to find Camagrian children around the time of, oh, I forget the word for it, basically right through puberty. So around that time of their life, you know, she sends out this, you know, like, this mind call, you know, to them, you know, as they have psychic powers, like, you know, greater than the Wraithu do. And so, so that's how Lily meets, but Mima doesn't pick up on this, and that is one thing that I didn't really like, is that it's not addressed in here why Mima didn't pick up on that from Telanka. You know, you'd think they would at least have some sort of, at least, postulate, like they'd at least be, postulating on this, the characters would, but, Talanka just sort of hand waves it, oh, well, you're a blood sister to the Tigran, so that might have something to do with it, and it's just kind of left at that. So that's one thing that I kind of wish was addressed a little bit more, is like, or at the very least, like maybe have Mima pick up on it, but, I don't know what I would have rather seen done, but I just would have at least liked to see it addressed, with the story as it is. I would have at least liked to see that addressed, like, why did Mima not pick up on this? Or is it something that only, like pureborn, Camagrian can do rather than incepted Camagrian? Who knows? It's a bit of a mystery in the book. But yeah, Lilim and, Mima, they meet Talanka and they learn more, and the storyline that really stuck, there's definitely a B-plot that I'm sort of brain farting on right now. Like I said, I'm almost done with the Shades of Time and Memory. I'm almost done with that book. But the A-plot to me was the plot with Lilim, was watching her, like, grow and, have her family and learn and mature and everything. And, this really stood out to me as Lilim's story. And, she's a delightful character. And even though, she ultimately does leave the other three behind, it is for good reason. It is for good reason. She has a very important work to do, which does come up in Shades of Time and Memory, and like I said, I'm about like 20 pages left on that, so hopefully something fabulous will happen, but yeah, for me, this was really Lilim's story rather than the other three. The other three did, were very important, but this really stood out as Lilim's story. And I would recommend it for her plot alone. It does continue with themes present in the first trilogy of fate and destiny and of course magic and the nature of gods and reality. But another theme that I really loved, that was really strong through this, was that of family and belonging, and how your tribe, especially in the world of Wraiths, isn't who begat you, it's just who you belong with. So yes, if you began as human, or even if you were born Wraiths into this one tribe, or if you were human and incepted into this one tribe, that may not be where your soul belongs. You may belong with those other heart over there. So that's something that really rang true for me, and so I think that's probably why I really liked following Lilim's story. Is I could at the end of the day, it seemed that she decided that she didn't really belong much of anywhere, at least not on this plane of reality, that she belonged where she is now. So yeah, would I say you can enjoy this without having read the first trilogy? Absolutely. You can find this very enjoyable. But I do think there is a heightened level of enjoyment when you know who Pelaz, who does come up in this. Cal not so much. I think Cal is very, very briefly in this, but then, but yeah, so, yeah, Pelaz does come up, and there is a B-plot, which I'm kind of brain farting on because I didn't take the greatest notes, but again, like I said, the A plot is what stood out for me. It's hard for me to tell which is the A plot and which is the B plot in Shades of Time and Memory. I'm not enjoying that one as much as I enjoyed this, but yeah, it's, and you know, this is the reason why I think that Storm Constantine's books do still have a very strong audience and always have, especially the Wraiths series with women and with LGBT people of all stripes, is because especially in this book, like I said so far, especially in this one, we're touching on it in Shades. I don't feel it as strongly in that one, but the idea that, you know, family is, you know, where your soul belongs, rather than, you know, who begat you. That's a very, very strong theme in this one, and, you know, again, highly recommended. Link in the description box for the first video if you think I've spoiled anything, and you can find these and all of her books on Amazon.com and other fine booksellers such as Barnes & Noble. Unfortunately, I don't have any referral links to get me any cash. So, if you enjoy all of my videos, I've got a Patreon and a Buy Me a Coffee link, and you can buy some of my music. I make music. I'm actually talking to somebody with a small batch record label, like they print vinyl too. I'm probably going to be on a compilation. And speaking of the Wraiths books, I'm actually working on music inspired by said. So, yeah, I guess that's it for today, sweetheart. So, bats and kisses, and I love you all so much, and hopefully the video doesn't eat the video.